Hello and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Wednesday, November 28th, 2018, and this is episode 81. My name is Carol and I'm known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry. The show notes for this and every episode can be found on the blog and also in the episode thread in the Ravelry group. If you'd like to get in touch, please do so via private message on Ravelry, by leaving a comment on YouTube, or by leaving a comment in the group, and I'll get back to you. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today on kind of a gray, dreary day here in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada. I live about 60 miles or 100 kilometers east of Vancouver. We had some heavy rain overnight, woke up to fog this morning, and for a brief moment it looked like the sun was going to shine, but that quickly disappeared and I haven't seen it since. So now it's raining lightly. It's kind of a good day to be indoors drinking something cozy, which is what I'm doing. I made myself a chai latte, actually. I don't know if you can see. Sprinkled a little nutmeg on top. It is made from this organic Saigon chai from David's Tea, and it is quite nice. You may be able to hear in my voice feeling a little bit under the weather. My husband kindly or not so kindly passed on his cold to me. So I'm just in the beginning stages with the sniffles and aches and a little bit of a sore throat. So hopefully it doesn't develop into anything as bad as what he was suffering. Knock wood. But I did want to record today. So what you see is what you get, as always. And those who don't mind, you keep tuning in, so I'm grateful for that. I have a fair bit to talk about this week. I have several finished projects. I have one work in progress to share with you, or two, depending on how you look at it. I have talk about what's up and coming. I have a couple of acquisitions and a giveaway, a knit along to announce, and then I'll talk a little bit about what's been going on this past week. So yeah, let's get into it, shall we? There's lots to say. So the first thing I'll talk about is our giveaway. This is your last chance to enter to win this skein of Gauge Dye Works MCN fingering. It is in the shawl stripes, 170 grams, 548 meters in the April Showers colorway. Make a nice, lovely shawl. If you'd like to win this skein, go over to the Ravelry group. You can find it by searching A Stitch in Time podcast under the groups tab, or if you go to the blog with the show notes, there's a link that will take you to the Ravelry group. And there's a thread devoted to the giveaway, and I'm just asking you to comment on it. Tell me something good about rain or a rainy day. So I look at it like April showers bring May flowers. That's a good thing that comes out of rain. Sometimes in these fall and winter months, it's hard to feel good about rain, especially when we've had a lot lately. But honestly, many of the things that you are telling me you like about rain, I honestly like too. I just have to be in the right mood for rain. Last night it was raining really hard, and I liked hearing the sound of that rain beating against the front room, living room window. I do like to be inside, nice and cozy on a rainy day, not so much being outside. Anyway, I am going to close the thread for that giveaway just before I record next podcast, and then I'll announce the winner in my next podcast. Most likely next week. I never guarantee it. You must be a member of the group to win, and only one entry per person. So yeah, hurry on over and get your entry in. This is a really nice, squishy, soft skein of yarn. I know it'll make somebody very happy. So I'm just going to take another sip here while it's still hot. Oh, that's so good. So last week I asked you if you'd be interested in doing an Advent knit along, crochet along, and I had several of you say that you would be. So I'm going to go ahead and open a thread in the group, and you can maybe before December 1st share your projects that you're going to be doing. Maybe give us a picture of your yarn. The knit along will run from December 1st to December 31st, and then I'll announce the winners on the first podcast of the new year. I'm going to do 2 winners. I'm going to do one that I'm just going to draw from the thread for chatter, for participation, and then I will draw a winner from among the finished projects. And I'm going to offer up project bags for prizes. So I have 3 that have the same fabric in different colors. And I've decided, because they're not, by the time the knit along is over, it will be after Christmas. So I didn't want anything specifically Christmassy, but these are wintry. So there's some cardinals with the kind of light gray background, or white background, kind of a silvery check. There's their blue background with the red bottom. And then this one's a little more Christmassy, but it's not specifically Christmassy, on a green background with this black background with pine cones and needles and berries. So the winner of the finished project draw will get to choose which one they like, and then the participation winner will get to choose from what's left. So excuse me, just gonna wipe my nose real quick. So the rules are not going to be really strict, because this is a hectic and stressful time of year, and we don't need anything to be more hectic and stressful than it needs to be. I had someone ask me about, she said she doesn't have a lot of leftover scrap of yarn, and she was wondering if it'd be okay if she picked a project and kind of divided it up and knit on it a little bit each day, and that works for me. All I ask is that you knit along in the spirit, or knit along or crochet along. I'm going to call it a knit along, but you can knit along or crochet along. Just be in the spirit of the KAL. So there are quite a few different Advent-oriented projects out there now. It seems to have become a thing. And so you might choose a project that is specifically references Advent. I know Amba O'Brien has several, and Anna Dalvey has seveul. I'm sure there are more. But then there are also some that just use scrap yarns, like Helen Stewart's Land of Sweets cowl that I did last year used 24 little mini skeins of yarn. So I knit a little stripe every day. She has I think it's Dust of Snow wrap this year that uses 24 mini skeins. You decide how you want to do it. I'm not going to hold you to knitting on it every single day, because I know life gets in the way. I guess I would just ask, sort of state your project and how you are going to knit it as an Advent project. That's good enough for me. 1 entry per person must be a member of the group to win. So again, I will draw a prize based on participation, and then I'll also draw a prize for a finished project. I'll talk a little bit more about what I'm going to knit for that coming up. But first, let's talk about finished projects. So I'm wearing one, and you haven't seen this project for a very long time because I haven't been working on it. This is the Wick Shawl by Helen Stewart. I think it was the 2nd or 3rd project in the Shawl Society 3 this year, which was based on The Secret Garden. And I cast it on at the end of July, and I took it with me on my holiday to Minnesota this year, and this summer, and I knit on it in the car quite a bit. and when I got home, I got all the way to where I needed to bind off, and then I stalled because I couldn't decide what I wanted to do for the bind off. The shawl pattern just instructed to do a stretchy bind off, and the edge was very plain. And I felt like I wanted something a little bit fancier, but not too fancy, and I had some beads that matched my yarn really well, and I wanted to incorporate them somehow. But only this past week did I finally get around to sitting down and looking at it and trying out a few things, and finally settled on a picot beaded bind off with color A. So let's talk about the yarns, and then I will show you my pattern, or my finished project, my finished shawl. So color A was this yellow, which was a Farmer's Daughter Rocky Mountain Pearls in the Spring Fever colorway. So you can see it's a kind of a speckled goldy yellow yarn. Color B was this kind of purpley mauvey blend. Oh, you might hear the garbage truck outside. It's garbage day today. This is Madeline Tosh Sock in the Margot colorway. And then I did the border in color C, which is Alouette Gems Fingering in the Grape colorway. So here's the picot bind off I ended up doing with a bead. And I went online and searched for picot bind off, beaded picot bind offs, and I came across a blog, someone called Fog Knits. And sorry, itchy nose. She had not exactly a tutorial, but a little discussion of how she did hers for she was doing a large circular shawl and added it to it, and so I stole her instructions, but I reworked it. She had 2 bind offs in between picots, and I didn't think it needed that many, plus I didn't think I had enough beads, and so I did 5 bind offs between each picot, and I liked the way that turned out. I also did some figuring out so I could make sure I placed one in the very center back and then went out from there. So it took a little bit of calculation and some knitting and reknitting and unknitting, but I finally finished it. So here, guess I'd better stand up and show you the shawl because I can see it's quite large. So yeah, you can see it starts out with color A, goes to color B, and then it has a section of stripes of color A and B, and then you finish off with color C with a little bit of lace before the border, or before the edging, I guess. The last big block there, and then as you can see I did that picot bind off. It's quite large. It's more than my wingspan by a couple of feet, so it's probably about 7 feet wide, and I'd say probably maybe 2.5 deep. So I love these yarns. I love the way that they played together. When I finished the picot bind off, I had second thoughts about it. I thought maybe it was too contrasty for the bottom, and maybe I should have just stuck to the pattern and just done a plain bind off. But once I had it blocking, I changed my mind, and I think it does add a nice little simple, understated edge to the bottom of the shawl. So I'm going to just put that back on. It's a nice addition here on this cool day. Not so warm as a sweater, but it gives me a little added warmth. I've been a little bit chilly. So that feels good to get that done. One is I wanted the needles, possibly wanted the needles back. And the other thing is I wanted to possibly incorporate one or more of these yarns into my Advent shawl that I'll be knitting. And as it turns out, I'm incorporating all 3. And so I wanted to get it all finished so that I would know how much yarn I had left over. Feel that foam on my lips. Okay, I also finished my How Quiet, or So Quiet, sorry, So Quiet hat and mitts, also by Helen Stewart. This is part of her Knit Vent collection, and for this year. So I showed you I was working on these mitts last week. They're knit from Cascade 220 Heathers in the Crushed Grape colorway. And I think last week I couldn't read the label and I said it was color 9542, but it's actually 9642. So I'm going to try one on for you. You can see I've washed and blocked them. So I think they turned out really well. I like the size. I have small hands. I suspect that these are for my son's girlfriend. I expect she might have a little bit bigger hands, taller anyway, because you can't hardly even see my pinky here, but I think they'll be okay. And what I did is I actually blocked them over my sock blockers just to sort of flatten out the stitching a little bit, because it was kind of just because of the way the stitch is done, I was a little bit biased here. So that worked well. And then I just threw them in a warm dryer for just a few minutes and allowed that yarn just to bounce back just a titch. This is feltable yarn, so I did not do that when they were wet. They were definitely cooled off, or dry by then, I should say. And then I did up the matching hat complete with fuzzy pom-pom. So again, same yarn, obviously. I knit I think it was just the lady size, the regular size for women, or I can't remember how many stitches. I'll make sure I put those details in my show notes. I should, or in my brain not working, in my project notes. I can't remember offhand how many stitches I cast on. And then I blocked this over a bowl. I don't know if any of you have that really old green Tupperware lettuce container from years and years ago, but I blocked it over that. And then once again, once it was completely dry, I threw it into the dryer just briefly, just to let it bounce back a little bit. Another garbage truck, this time across the street, so forgive the noise if you can hear that. So yeah, this is a really cute hat. You can either wear it kind of like that, in a slouchy way, or if you want, you can turn up the brim and wear it as what we call in Canada a toque. I think a beanie is another word for it. I think watch cap is another word for it. We call them toques here. So there you go. And hopefully you can see that. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how that turned out. Hopefully Ray is too. And yeah, so good to have a Christmas present all finished, ready to go. Just make sure my hair, okay. I got my hair cut this weekend, and sometimes it takes a week or two to kind of get it where I like it. It's still not behaving quite right. And with curly hair, it never, or very rarely ever, behaves exactly how you want it. My hair definitely has a mind of its own. It's never the same 2 days running. And speaking of Christmas knitting, I've been working on a pair of socks for my brother-in-law Trevor. I drew his name for Christmas, and he really likes my hand knit socks, and so I picked up this skein of opal. The series is Symphony of Dreams. I looked it up on the translator. It means Symphony of Dreams, and it is in color 9613 Gerol. I do not know if that's how you say it. I think I added a little French R roll there. Google Trend. Well, when I looked on line on just looking for this yarn, and one website had it translated as loud cobbles, but when I put into Google Translator, it came up as loud scree. Now, for those of you who may not have English as a first language, scree is little rocks and gravel that accumulate along a slope of a mountain, and then they'll kind of roll downhill, you know, form a little pile at the bottom, form a pile of scree. So what that's really supposed to mean and what it has to do with Symphony of Dreams, I have absolutely no idea, but there you have it. I am just calling them Christmas socks for Trevor because that just seemed much more fitting. So I bought this yarn last week, and I've had a fair bit of time to work on it because it's basically all I've been working on. And then we had some car time earlier this week, which I'll tell you about. So I actually have quite a bit done. Here's the first sock. It's getting pretty close, I think within an inch or so of doing the toes. I'm hopeful that I will have enough yarn. I did a 7-inch cuff, which I was looking at notes, and that seems to be what I did with another pair of socks that I knit for him out of a similar yarn. So I'm hopeful, and I know on another pair I ended up having to add the toe in a different color, and he won't mind. But I'm kind of confident I should be able to get them all out of that yarn. He has a wider foot than pretty well all the other men in my life, so I cast on 76 stitches on a 2mm instead of 72, which is what I would normally do for a man's sock. And yeah, so then the other one, not quite caught up. I've got another, basically this stripe to do before it'll be at the same point. So they're coming along well. I can't say as they're very exciting. I'd rather be knitting on my Ocean Sunset socks that I showed you last week because they're much prettier, much more interesting, but I'm really trying to bang out Christmas presents so that the days leading up to Christmas won't be quite so stressful. A couple of weeks ago, when my family was all here celebrating our fall birthdays, my sister, who's supposed to host Christmas this year, asked if anyone else would mind taking it on instead, because back in early October they had a water leak in their kitchen and they're in the process of having restoration work done. Only it's not really getting done, and she's got stuff all over her house, and it's not really conducive to hosting 20 odd people for Christmas dinner. And so even though it's not my turn, I had it 2 years ago, I was anticipating it in 2 more years, I volunteered. And so on top of just regular Christmas prep, I have to figure out Christmas dinner and do all that stuff this year too. So I'm really trying to get my gifts knocked out so that I can be a little bit stressed now and be able to ease into the holidays a little more. Which is partly why I really encourage any of you who are in the same boat to maybe consider an Advent project for yourself. I really enjoyed doing the Land of Sweets cowl last year, and it was nice to sit down every day and just have a little bit of knitting time just for me without having any sort of real deadline, because honestly, whether I finished it or not wasn't the point. It was just to carve out a little bit of time for myself each day to knit something just for me. And so this year, well, last year, I saw several people knitting the Adventurous Wrap by Amba O'Brien, and I decided that I was going to make one myself this year. So you can get the idea. It's two triangles that are joined together along the center line. And so you knit one triangle, then you knit the other, and then I think you do a 3-needle bind off here. Now, I think it was Quilter, Barbara in the group. She's doing this for the knit along, and she's been looking at the knit along thread for this project from last year and getting some tips and tricks. So one is that there is a spreadsheet that is available that helps you keep track of all the rows with the different colors. The other, she's learned through this knit along that she's decided, I guess in the original there is a couple of rows of color 1 that separate, I think it's color 12 and color 25, if I'm remembering correctly, and or maybe 13 and 25. In any case, she didn't like the way that looked, so she's not going to do that. I haven't decided yet. I'll decide when I get there. I've picked a color that will complement the two adjoining colors, so we'll see. Once I get to that point, I'll have a better idea. So I guess I started on Sunday, brought out all my sock yarn scraps, and I had organized them sometime this past year, I think it was, into variegated and solid and tonal, and had put them in little bags of similar colors. So actually picking colors for it wasn't too difficult. What was harder about it was deciding what order I wanted them in. And then I would run into trouble because some of them need more yarn than others, and sometimes I like to color in a certain spot, but I didn't have enough to do it. So finally, I guess we were gone all day Monday, and then yesterday, Tuesday, we actually had some not too bad weather, and it was pretty good light in the morning, and I was able to finish off all my selection and put it all together. So I've recorded all my color choices here, wrote down how many grams and how many yards, estimated how many yards I had of each color. And what I will probably do when I finish is write how much I used of each yarn on my project page, because I know I find that kind of thing really helpful on a project like this when you're trying to decide if you'd have enough or not. I will not, excuse me, I'm just going to lean out of frame and pull my thing over here. Got all my yarn in this Buckingham Palace bag that my sister had brought to me. And I don't know if you can see. Let me see if I can show you. Got all these little balls of yarn ready to go. And so December 1st I'll cast on. So this is the color I chose for color 1. And they'll go from there. I'm not going to pull them all out. One thing I used for inspiration, you'll notice lately I seem to be using these kind of shades, these mauvey shades, quite a bit, and I just seem to be inspired by that. And my what's it called? Time Trades I just knit had a lot of those shades in it. So what I ended up choosing as a color palette was kind of the mauvey purpley color to green and to gold. And I had I kind of based my choices more or less on this skein of yarn. And so it's not exact, but it's sort of true to those colors. I will talk about this skein of yarn in another segment, but that's kind of my color palette. So we'll see, hopefully what looked okay on the floor, I had them all laid out on the floor, will look okay in the knitting too. I guess I can always make adjustments if I have to, but I'm hoping I don't have to. I think sometimes I just have to let go a little and just let things be as they are. I tend to get way too hung up on little things. At least when it comes to knitting. So that's going to be, like I say, cast on December 1st. And then for as far as Christmas gifts go, I still need to knit a pair of felted clogs for my son Matt. And I need to drag out my downtown mystery socks that I started for Cameron. And I think I've pretty well decided I am going to rip them back, rip out the heel and gusset, and take off a pattern repeat and re-knit them, rather than get near the end and find out I don't have enough yarn to finish, because I'm pretty sure I don't. I know it's going to be nip and tuck, so I am just going to take that factor right out of it. And yes, it means re-knitting two socks worth of heels and gussets, but I think in the end I just could do without the mystery. So the uncertainty and the yarn chicken. So that's what I've decided to do. So I guess probably once I finish Trevor's socks, I will sit down and get those ready to go. Okay, so last Wednesday, I had lunch with a friend, and we live a fair distance apart, so we meet halfway, and halfway-ish is very close to 88 Stitches in Langley, which is one of my favorite yarn shops. And so my tradition is to go have lunch with my friend and then go and pop into 88 Stitches before I head home. So I picked up that yarn for Trevor's socks. And then I also picked up this skein of yarn that I just showed you. It's Malibu Go Rios in the Illusion colorway, which is 842. Again, I've just been drawn to these colors lately. This should, it does look quite nice with my Time Trades shawl. So if I wear that as a scarf, this will go nicely. I meant to bring up, I have a pashmina I bought in, where was it? I forget, Croatia, and it has some of these colors in it. I meant to bring it up. I've been wearing that with this purple jacket I have, and I had that on when I bought this yarn, and it doesn't match exactly, but it kind of picks up some of those same colors, and so I could wear this hat with either of those two scarves, wraps, and also, if all goes as planned, with my adventurous wrap. So this turned out to be a really good choice, and I can't wait to cast on a hat. I can't believe how hard it is to find a pattern. I know I want kind of a slouchy hat. Toques really don't suit me. They squish down my hair too much. So I tend to do like berets or slouchy hats. And you wouldn't think it would be that hard to find just the right pattern, but I'm having trouble. I did a Ravelry research yesterday or day before. I guess it was yesterday, and I did find one that's written specifically for this yarn, and it comes, the pattern includes a toque, a slouchy hat, and an extra slouchy hat, all in the same pattern. I think it has a little bit of a lace pattern, if I'm remember correctly, and I think that's probably going to be the one, and if I think of it, I'll put the name of that pattern right here. If not, I'll try and remember to put it in the show notes. Anyway, look for that to be up and coming at some point. I'm not sure when. And then I also picked up this skein of Lakyn Lace matte sock in the pressed flower colorway. That is a 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon blend. I remember seeing this color at Knit City, and they had so many skeins and they all looked different. This was the only skein they had in stock there. But again, it's these purpley colors, and I just decided to go for it. So, don't know what that's going to be. Probably not socks, but you never know. I also took advantage of a couple of holiday weekend sales, so I'm anticipating the arrival of some new yarn. Who knows when it'll get here. We've had Canada Post has been on strike, and they've just been ordered back to work. I think they were supposed to start yesterday, but there's a real backlog of parcels, and so who knows how long it's going to take to get through those, not to mention delivering new things. So I know one of them at least has shipped, and I'll get it when I'll get it. It's not like there's a panic. So as for this week, as I mentioned, I had lunch with a friend of mine on Wednesday, and then it was ugly day for weather. It was pouring rain all the way in and all the way back. So I kind of made sure I left in time to get home before it got dark, because it was just so gross on the freeway. And there was a real slowdown for quite a while, because there had been, I think the day or two before that, a dump truck had gone off the highway and people were slowing down to look at it. As soon as we were past that, speed picked right up, and then it took no time to get home. And just as I was getting to my freeway exit, I heard that there had been 2 accidents in the same area going eastbound, and I was so grateful that I'd avoided that, because it was bad enough just with the slowdown, with the distraction. So, and then that evening we went over to our daughter Jessica's place for our grandson's 8th birthday celebration. So he had a party with his friends on the weekend, but we had dinner with them, and he chose hamburgers. That was his choice for dinner, so that was good. So we had a little visit with them and birthday cake, and then headed home. Cameron had been away overnight with work. Plus he's suffering from this cold, so we didn't stay late. It was a school night anyway, and we were both kind of tired, and glad it was just, just dinner, and then headed home after that. Then the next day, Cameron's brother arrived to stay overnight, because he had come over from Vancouver Island to attend a friend's funeral on Friday. So he was here Thursday, and then Friday night and Saturday we played in a charity volleyball tournament. We've done this for a number of years now, and so we played 1 game Friday night, 3 games Saturday. Now I haven't been playing volleyball for the last couple of years, so I was kind of rusty, but I'm not sure who did the planning. Originally, our Saturday schedule, they had us on 2 different courts playing 2 different teams at the same time. Of course, we can't be in 2 places at once, so they reworked the schedule, and they ended up giving us 3 games back to back to back. So by the time we were done. It was, my arms were sore, and we were done. But we were finished before noon, and so we had 2 teams of, I think it was 13 of us all together participating, friends of ours. So a bunch of us went out for brunch after, and then that gave us the rest of Saturday free. So that was welcome, because we just have been go, it seems, lately. And then Sunday, my mom came back to stay with us overnight, and then we took her home Monday. So Cameron took a day off work, and we drove there and back. It's about round trip, probably, if traffic's decent, 6.5 hours or so, 6.5 to 7. And once again, we just had an ugly day for travel. It was pouring rain. About halfway there, eased up, and then we came back into it on our way home. And by then, we left my mom's place a little bit later than we planned, and so it was dark for the last probably third of the trip. So with the dark and the rain, I'm just really glad I wasn't driving. On a regular, or decent weather and stuff, I don't mind driving, but I was concerned about snow and concerned about ice and stuff, so Cameron's car is better for that than mine is. His tires are better. And anyway, he didn't mind doing it. So we got my mom home. She was glad to be home. She'd been gone about 2.5 weeks. So she'll come back down again for Christmas. So she's lots to do between now and then, as do the rest of us, I guess. And then that night, I had my ladies' night get together. So went to a friend's with the rest of my friends, and we had a nice little evening together, as we usually do. And her daughter and new grandson were staying over there because they were having some work done at their place, and so we got to meet her new grandson. I had a few months back made a quilt, kind of a jungle animal quilt for him, so it was nice to finally get to meet him. He's about 4 months old. Did I say that? He's about 4 months old now. Trying to think what else. I guess curling begins tomorrow. Much later than it normally does. Usually we're curling sometime in October, but had a new rink built this year, and it's finally ready to go. And so curling kicked off this week. So our first game is tomorrow at 4:30. So we have a 5-person team this year, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to have a good year. So looking forward to getting back into that again. We just have a few games before Christmas, and then we'll stop, but we'll get our feet wet anyway. Pardon me, I can feel my throat starting to get really raspy, so I'll just do my last segment, which is something good. And I really thought about this one. I had a few ideas, and then it came down to fresh baked bread. When we took my mom home, we stopped for lunch at a place that it's like a farm market. And during the summer, it's super busy with, and they're very well known for their pies. And so, yeah, my mom suggested stopping in there on the way home rather than going to a pub or something, having like fried food and that. So we had wonderful like homemade style soups, and Cameron had a really nice sandwich on fresh baked bread. I had a little slice of chicken pot pie. My mom had a soup with a bun, and the bun was like, well, I don't know if you can tell from that, but it was probably like the size of 4 small dinner rolls. It was huge, and so delicious because, again, freshly baked. So Cam bought a loaf of bread to bring home, 7-grain bread, and I've been having it the last couple mornings, having a slice of it as toast in the morning, and it's so good. There's nothing quite like that smell or that taste. It reminds me of when I was a kid. My grandma used to bake all her own bread, and when we would go up to the cabins in the summer, probably once a summer, she would let us kids get in on the bread baking. So she would give us all like a lump of dough, and while she was preparing her loaves to go in the pans, we would play with this dough and form it into a bunch of different things before we finally decided on our last thing. So sometimes we would just make it into a little small loaf. Sometimes we divide it into several buns. Sometimes we braid it. Sometimes make like a little man or little face, little balls of dough for eyes and nose and stuff. And that would usually be ready kind of a little bit before dinner. And she'd always say, don't eat too much. I don't want you to spoil your supper. So that smell and taste of freshly baked bread always reminds me of my childhood. I'll do bread in the bread maker, and sometimes I do dough in the bread maker and then bake buns in the oven, or cinnamon buns or something. But I've only attempted like real bread, as in doing all the kneading and stuff myself, a handful of times. But it just smells and tastes so good. So that's my something good for this week. On that note, I'm going to say goodbye now. So thank you, as always, for watching, and thank you to all of you who were in touch this week. I know I say it every week, but I really do appreciate it. I enjoy the two-way conversation. that I have with so many of you. So thank you. They always brighten my day when I see a note pop up. And yeah, so I guess heading into December, and if you are prepping for the holidays, be sure to take a little bit of time for yourself and keep yourself sane. And yeah, consider joining the Advent Knit Along, Crochet Along. I'll open up a thread in the group for that, and I'm anxious to see the chatter begin. So take care, everyone, until probably next week. I believe I will be able to record then. So take care till then. See you soon. Bye.